Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about albums that I love. If 20-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds. You can find that both here on my channel and over on my Instagram. Before we get things going, I just wanted to thank you all for 5,000 subscribers here. I definitely wasn't expecting that to happen so soon after I took a week off for my holiday break, so thank you for the warm welcome back and for all the love on my VU and Nico episode. From the Velvet Underground to the Velvet album cover, this week's album is Odessa by the Bee Gees. I recognize this is kind of an oddball in this series as well as in the Bee Gees discography, but I like to think of Vinyl Monday as kind of a vinyl book club. So I talk about these albums, and if maybe you haven't heard of them before this, you'd go check them out. Congrats to the few of you that guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. I host a little game over there where you can guess what album I'm gonna cover the next week. I host polls over there, just hosted a crash poll for you guys to pick next week's episode, and I also keep a running count of how many episodes it takes for me to swear 5 times in one video, thus completing the opening chord progression of the Beach Boys' Our Prayer. Hey, I'm getting better and better at that. That is a long line. So glad I got that in one take. This sleeve is not doing this packaging any justice, so let's take the plastic off. I feel like I need a lint roller for this album cover. Attracts like everything. I keep this room so clean, and yet it still attracts like lint. There's like, why? So my copy of this album is an early run, if not an original. It's not in perfect condition. As you can see, this cover wears pretty easy by its nature, but the discs look great and sound great. I got this copy at Turn It Up's location in Northampton while filming something. I hope you'll get to see it someday soon. Let's talk about this cover art. It's velvet! I have so much velvet in my wardrobe. I have like 3 velvet dresses over there, velvet pants. My velvet coat is over there too. There's some on my dress today. One of my favorite fabrics. And this cover is this gorgeous bright red velvet with gold lettering. It's beautiful in its simplicity. Fun fact, this material, this specific velvet used for the album cover, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. Beach House used the rest of it for the physical release of their 2015 album Depression Cherry. Now, instead of the velvet cover, they're using a holographic material. Depression Cherry is a phenomenal record, by the way. It was one of the first records that I really wanted on vinyl, and it somehow still isn't in my collection. Huge oversight. On the inside of this red velvet gatefold sleeve, we open up to this gorgeous green. I adore this red and green combo. It reminds me of Hitchcock's films. He liked to use a lot of red and green since those were the colors that looked best in Technicolor. I am holding this together the best I can right now. Gotta be careful with these gatefold sleeves when they're fragile. On the vertical, we have this illustrated scene of a crew abandoning ship. This seems a little random, but it'll make sense. On Odessa, of course, we have the Brothers Gibb, the Bee Gees. We have Big Bro Barry Gibb on vocals and guitar, Robin Gibb on vocals, piano, Hammond organ, and mellotron, and twin Maurice Gibb on vocals, bass, guitar, and keys. We also have Vince Maloney on guitar and Colin Peterson on drums. The session musicians include Bill Keith playing the banjo on Marley Pert Drive, Tex Logan playing fiddle on Give Your Best, and Paul Buckmaster on the cello for the title track. That's a name I've definitely mentioned on Vinyl Monday before. I just can't remember which album it is. The orchestral arrangements are by Bill Shepard, and this record was produced by Robert Stigwood. Once again, talking personnel is the perfect segue into the story of recording Odessa. Roll transition! Kinda love that I get to say that one now. So, the Bee Gees weren't always the disco group that we know them as today. Once upon a time, long before the days of Saturday Night Fever and other music that I have a similar distaste for, the Bee Gees were a full band. They've always been a pop group, so of course they've always followed pop trends. The 70s was disco, and the late 60s was the likes of progressive rock, Baroque pop, the rock opera was just taking form. It's worth noting that all of these trends are very lavish. After a handful of moderate successes, the very young Bee Gees, it's worth noting the twins were still teenagers at the time, are ready to set out on a bigger project. Barry wants to try his hand at the whole rock opera thing, so he writes the OG concept of this album. The fictional British ship Veronica getting lost at sea in 1899, stranded on an iceberg in the Baltic Sea off the coast of Odessa. Stigwood commented on this album's release that Barry had an incredible and wonderful imagination, and I don't doubt this. It takes a lot of thought to come up with a story, even the baseline of a story like that. Recording takes place at Trident and IBC Studios in London between July and December of 1968. In what should be a surprise to absolutely no one, recording a concept album is hard. Being British-born, Australia-raised, the brothers Gibb have all these, and I quote, insane musical influences, and it proves to be way too much to cram into just one concept. The idea morphs into a project called an American opera, then into another concept called masterpiece. Peace being like peace, not peace. This hot potato of ideas kind of reminds me of what happened with Smile by the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson was trying to tell the story of America through this teenage symphony to God, and in the end it was just way too big of an idea to carry out. And that is what happens with Odessa. There are 3 concurrent storylines happening right now, but the deadline for the album's release is approaching, so they slam it all together and package it as Odessa. So when I have a lot to keep track of, I color code the track listing on the screen for you guys. By nature of a double album like this, oh boy, I'm gonna be color coding the song titles for you guys by who is singing lead. The Barry songs are gonna be in red, the Robin songs in gold, and the Maurice songs in green. The track listing of Odessa goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have the title track, Odessa, with the subtitle, City on the Black Sea. Next is You'll Never See My Face Again, and side 1 closes with Black Diamond. Opening up side 2, we have Marley Pert Drive, then Edison, followed by Melody Fair, next Suddenly, and the first disc closes with Whisper Whisper. Opening side 3, we have Lamplight, followed by Sound of Love, then Give Your Best, next Seven Seas Symphony, and side 3 closes on With All Nations with the subtitle International Anthem. I am just going to be calling it International Anthem for the rest of this video. Opening side 4, we have I Laugh in Your Face, then Never Say Never Again, followed by 1st of May, and the album closes with the British opera. The mammoth that is Odessa was released in March of 1969, and this cover design, the velvet, held up production spectacularly. So much that subsequent runs were reduced to just a simple red cardboard cover. The stress of production took its toll on the band. They went on hiatus, and it made Robin supremely fed up with Barry's shit. Robin left the group for a whole year after Odessa. Now, the cover wasn't the only thing that was changed about Odessa in its subsequent releases. When the Bee Gees got really big during the whole disco thing in the 70s, it sparked an interest in their back catalog. So, to re-release Odessa, they cut it down to a single album. They omitted the following tracks from the single album release: Black Diamond, Edison, Suddenly, Whisper Whisper, and Lamplight. Trust me, I have thoughts about that. Seven Seas Symphony and the British Opera. All of those were taken out for Odessa's re-release. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Upon initial release, critical reception of Odessa wasn't that great. Despite this, it made the top 20 in the US, charted even higher in the UK, so even though it was a critical failure, it was a commercial success. You don't see that too often. Since then, the tides have changed considerably. Oh my god, no pun intended. Odessa is kind of a cult classic, especially among this sector of vinyl collectors on YouTube. I've noticed a lot of people who dig the 60s and 70s like me putting Odessa in their collections. It's in my collection too, so what do I think of the behemoth that is Odessa? Going in, like I said, I heard about Odessa through YouTube. For the life of me, I can't remember which creator it was. I can't find their video, but whoever it was, thank you. And I truly had no idea what to expect. I think I expected a straight Baroque pop album like Odyssey and Oracle, and then the first song starts playing and I thought it'd be a prog rock record. Which brings me into my first point. I soon found out there is a lot going on this thing. Honey, if this is your first time listening to Odessa, you got a big storm coming. Yes, there is Baroque pop on Odessa, but there's also songs with movements, like, say, ELP would do, or, an even better example, Islands era King Crimson. Side note, Islands is the best King Crimson album, and you cannot convince me otherwise. There's instrumental suites like Seven Seas Symphony, International Anthem, the British Opera. There's Marley Pert Drive, which is like the band style tune. No, who am I kidding? It's not a band style tune. It is a band tune. It's literally The Weight. And there's Give Your Best, which is a goofy ass country song. Is it a concept album? Is it Baroque pop? Is it Americana? Is it prog? What is Odessa? Why is Odessa? My first reaction to this thing was that Odessa can't decide what it wants to be. Then I did my research on this album to find that my feelings were totally valid because the Bee Gees themselves couldn't decide what they wanted Odessa to be. I'm gonna give my 3 biggest critiques of Odessa right here, right now. Number 1, this album is bloated. My God, this album is long. It's just over an hour long, and it's not one of those long albums that you can just throw on and forget about. You have to actively listen to follow all of the things that are happening here. It's an hour and 4 minutes long, and you feel every minute of it. There are double albums that benefit from their longness. I think of Blonde on Blonde, Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland, my personal favorite, Layla. They benefit from their longness. Odessa does not. It seems even the Bee Gees themselves thought Odessa was bloated. They cut it down to a single album for its re-release. Number 2. Odessa is inconclusive. Odessa has a lot of big ideas happening at once, but none of them are followed through upon. Even considering how long this is, it still feels incomplete. When I wrapped up my first listen, I immediately went from thinking, I kind of can't wait till this is over, to, wait, that's it? It's over? That's all? Which leads me to number 3. The pacing is so weird. This record starts off strong, and that always worries me because it means either there's going to be a really sharp drop in quality through the middle, or the end is going to be underwhelming. Both of these things happen on Odessa. I can't understand for the life of me why suddenly Whisper Whisper and Lamplight would be cut from the 70s release of this album. They're 3 of the strongest tracks on this thing. And why, oh why, are 7 Seas and International Anthem back to back? The Sweets err on the side of melodramatic. I don't love them to begin with. 7 Seas sounds like a Vangelis Chariots of Fire cast-off. So why are they both on this album? It makes no sense. This goes back to point 1 for me, and then it creates this weird Odessa feedback loop, and God, this album is a mindfuck. Yes, this record is deeply flawed. But I realized that if I wanted this video to come to any sort of valuable conclusion, if I wanted to organize my thoughts in any way, I was going to have to reframe how I think of Odessa. To best understand this album, I'm placing it alongside 2 similar albums from the time. Just like Odessa, the White Album has a lot of ideas with no clear conclusion of any of them. It's a mess, but don't come for me. That doesn't mean it's bad. The White Album is actually my favorite Beatles record. For that reason. Those traits work to its benefit. McCartney had his granny songs and the stroke of genius that is Mother Nature's son. John was doing rock and roll and all that weird stuff with Yoko. George really comes into his own as an artist on the White Album, and Ringo's just being Ringo. In that sense, the White Album benefits from its longness and lack of clear direction, whereas Odessa does not. There's clashing influences on the White Album, and they work to each individual guy. Odessa is the same way. Colin Peterson and Maurice Gibb were bringing the country stuff, while Barry was bringing the soul. And, Tommy. Some of you might remember from last summer that I really struggled with Tommy. Partly because I didn't give myself enough time to absorb it. My bad. This album is clearly a 2-weeker. Lesson learned. And partly because there is a lot happening on Tommy. Pete Townsend really needed to write out the whole plot of this thing and then have somebody else go through it with a red pen. I think Barry Gibb had this exact problem on Odessa. It makes me wonder what Odessa might have looked like as an early rock opera. This record came out 2 months before Tommy, so I wonder about that potential. If even one of the plots of Odessa had been followed through upon, the Bee Gees might have taken an entirely different route in the 70s. Imagine the Bee Gees as the rock opera powerhouse. Fuck it, imagine the Who doing disco. I would have loved to see that. Tommy and Odessa have a lot more in common than one might think. They both suffer from that early rock opera Achilles heel, which is too many ideas for one plot. You have 2 plots in Tommy and at least 3 in Odessa. That's why I decided to look at Odessa in chunks. The songs meant for the original Odessa concept, the songs meant for an American opera, and the masterpiece songs. I've listed them all out in my notes. I'm just gonna read them right from there. This is how I categorize the songs on Odessa. For the OG Odessa, I have the title track, You'll Never See My Face Again, Black Diamond, Lamplight, the Seven Seas Symphony, I Laugh in Your Face, and the British Opera. An American opera includes Marley Pert Drive, Edison, Give Your Best, and Never Say Never Again. Then for masterpiece, I gave Melody Fair, Suddenly, Sound of Love, International Anthem, and First of May. I'm all about divvying up an album however you have to get the most enjoyment you can out of it. Divvying up Odessa greatly helped my understanding of it. Believe it or not, there are some things that I like about Odessa. I really dig the Beatlesque moments on here. Whisper Whisper could be a McCartney tune. It sounds like a McCartney 1 outtake, or maybe a McCartney White Album tune. Actually, that funk breakdown on Whisper Whisper makes it sound like a Wings tune. I also pen the second movement of the title track as very Paul. There's also some Beach Boys influence on here with Edison, especially those opening vocal harmonies and keys. It actually sounds like something Sagittarius would have done, and of course Sagittarius was the studio project of the Beach Boys producer. If my love of Donovan, ISB, or even the Fools album are any indication, I love a good mid-century medieval influence. I mean, hello, this dress, vintage young Edwardian. I could wear this prancing around in a field with a motherfucking pan flute. Melody Fair is the mid-century medieval / Baroque pop darling. It's the best song on here. It's charming, even if it's a little rude, but it's worth noting I didn't originally interpret it that way. I totally thought it was like a Dear Prudence song. Oh, I had to have somebody else point out to me that it's kind of misogynistic. But the hand claps are so cute. Part of why I find Melody Fair, and in turn a lot of Odessa, so charming is because it's so far removed from what the Bee Gees would be doing in the 70s. I do not like disco. I think disco in the mainstream was a profound waste of time. Anyway, I really wish there was more Baroque pop and mid-century medieval things on Odessa. Shout out to Maurice's classical guitar playing. It works on every genre of music on this record. The ending of First of May gives me chills. I really wish that the album had just ended with that instead of the British Opera. That was right to cut from the 70s release. All in all, this record has a rich, opulent, and varied list of influences, rivaled only by Sgt. Pepper's. The more I listen to Odessa, the more of them I hear. This was one of the more challenging albums I've covered on Vinyl Monday. You gotta pack your patience for this one because its best moments are the deep cuts. Hell, Odessa is a Bee Gees deep cut, so the best moments are the deep cuts of the deep cut. Odessa certainly is ambitious. There's a lot of big ideas happening on here, and maybe you'll get something out of one of them. As scatterbrained as it is, I truly believe that Odessa has something for everyone. My personal favorites are You'll Never See My Face Again, Marley Pert Drive, Melody Fair, Suddenly, Whisper Whisper, and First of May. If you want to keep up with all of the faves, I have a Vinyl Monday Spotify playlist linked in my description of all of my favorite songs from every Vinyl Monday I've ever done. Ooh, and that is it. That is the Bee Gees' Odessa. What do you think of this album? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!